because the mics aren't hot. So my computer's really slow sometimes when I process opening the mics.
Yeah, I mean, I would suggest getting a new computer because it's only a matter of time if that one shits on you. It's equipment. So the next time you get a payment that's at least $2,000, I would upgrade. You could get a refurbished Mac that's like within a year or two for like $700 to $900.
Well, I'm waiting for 2Gs to process, and then once that processes, but I don't want to go blow. I'm gonna pay off the credit card, and then
yeah,
I don't want to blow.
Here's the deal, though. I'm really confident that they will have a deal done.
I think so too.
That's going to extend unemployment till the end of January. It's not going to be the full 6. It's probably not going to be the full 6. It's going to be about 4, I think. It's going to be the 400. I think that's where they compromise. And you're going to get it back paid. You're going to be able to back pay it from September till the end of January. Crunch those numbers. That's going to be like 5 racks minimum each.
If they do that, that's ridiculous.
That's going to be September, October, November, December, January.
I'll be like,
that'd be $1,600.
the motherfucker that sacrifices the most, it makes so much sense, because if you look at it, if someone looks back at the start of this, which I did, and you're like, I'm going to sacrifice and stay and live off this unemployment.
That'd be $6,400 outside of regular unemployment.
So the person that has the most to gain from all this is the person that says, they saw it coming and says, I'm going to sacrifice, live down here, and collect all this. And then you're going to be...
Well, of course, anyone that sacrifices at any time is going to make the most out of it.
But especially through this, if you live it on the streets through all this and you stacked all your cheddar, you could have 10 to 20.
I would never want to live on the street, so I don't know what you're saying about that.
Yeah,
you're just talking about living way below your means. Well, that was really before you even got unemployment.
Yeah.
You're talking about living below your means, knowing that you're getting money versus assuming you're going to get more money and just start living above your means now.
Yeah.
It's the common theme that Robert Kiyosaki talks about. People make more money, they get in more debt. Bad debt is what he's saying. It's common sense. You think it's just a common behavior that we've seen. But like Grant Cardone says, you live at the 20% number.
Yep.
You only live off 20% of your take-home income.
Want me to unfollow some accounts now?
Please, just on JRW or on the Two Brothers TV at Instagram.
Well, I'm going live, so we're
Take your
live right
time.
now.
Yeah, take
So-
your time. One moment, folks. The mics are going to be set up any moment. It's just the mics. My computer's slow. S-L-O-W. S-L-O-W.
So today we're going to talk about expectations. Thanks everyone for tuning in today.
I don't know why.
Shout out to
this computer
LeBron
is
James
so
and the Lakers. They won by 18 points. They were up at 32 at one point, and they absolutely dominated. And they are in big trouble if that Miami Heat dude, 2 Miami Heat players got injured, Dragic, and then I don't even know how to say the other dude's name.
Dragic and Abadaya.
Abadaya. If Abadaya gets injured, he's the only player that can even considerably stop somewhat or slow down Anthony Davis.
They don't even have a chance. The Lakers are so fucking big when LeBron's on the court. When you put LeBron with Davis and Howard, they are the biggest
They're
team
just
in the league.
long.
Look how big all
They're
those guys
long. They're like aliens. They're just freaking monsters.
are.
man.
Howard's 7 feet. Isn't Anthony Davis 6'11"?
Yeah. So
And LeBron's
it's
what?
going to be 5 games.
You
I'm going to
gotta-
give Miami Heat 1 game because they're a gritty team, and Eric Spoelstra is going to have them focus.
I got Lakers in 5.
Yeah, Miami's going to get a game. It's going to be either game 2 or game 3 potentially.
And that's if they're lucky. Otherwise, I got them in 4.
Yeah, if they get smoked in game 2, I'm predicting
a sweep.
a sweep. They might get a win out of game 3. If you look at how the Lakers have operated in the playoffs, like when they won games 1 and 2 and they might lose one, or if they lose a game, they just don't lose another one.
Usually it's game 1 though.
For LeBron, yeah, he usually loses game 1 and then you're screwed because he figures you out. But they already figured him out, so they're done.
D-O-N.
So LeBron's going to get his 4th ring. I think Anthony Davis will probably get the MVP the way he's playing, but we'll see. It's going to be either him and LeBron get the MVP. And then they're going to be locked to pick up some more key players and bring back key players. They're going to be, for the next 5 years, the Lakers are going to be in the finals or West. They're going to make championship runs the next 5 years. So Anthony Davis quoted that he wants to go to 9 straight, just like LeBron. With LeBron, he wants to go 9 straight. But LeBron ain't going to play till he's 44. I think LeBron's going to play about.
I don't know, man. There's new things in sports these days. With if you look at the best guys in the NFL, I think.
Yeah, LeBron's going to play for about 4 more years. I'd say he's going to play 22 seasons. I think that's the number.
I think LeBron is going to play longer than anyone else in the history.
Yeah, he's
of
going to
the
play
NBA.
22 years. That's my prediction. He'll
I was reading an
tap
article,
out at 40.
I was reading the article by Chris Bosh yesterday, and he personally said it. He goes, now he used to play with LeBron when he was younger in Miami, and he said he's seeing the dividends pay off that LeBron did with taking care of his joints, his body, his workout routine, and not going too hard but staying balanced. He said LeBron at a young age was really mature with his workout regimen and not going too insane in the gym or like too crazy with like how he treated his body. So Chris Bosh estimates LeBron's going to play till he's 42. That's what Chris Bosh said in the article.
Yeah, I was guessing 40, which is 22 seasons. And I think he'll end up with 5 or 6 chips.
But I think it's a great example of leadership, LeBron. I think he is a primary example of someone that can go anywhere and take people, no matter who they are, no matter what skill set they have, and help build them up and put them on his back and bring them to the
Yeah,
promised
I think
land.
he's a great example of how failure is great. Like, people talk about his finals last record, but when it's all said and done, his finals that he has lost has made him so much better. Like, there is not a moment he can't handle. So if you look at failure, yeah, he's lost so many finals, but he's also going to probably go to the most and potentially have the most rings or tie for 6th at the most. And he's going to have every record book.
Everything, and he already almost has all the record book statistics.
It'll be about 2 or 3 more years, and you'll have them all.
Everything, every stat in the NBA playoffs he'll have. He'll be number 1 in
Besides
everything.
3-pointers, he'll never pass Steph Curry on that. That's not happening.
But that's remarkable when you think about it, man. And then when you think about his finals record, it's even more remarkable when you think about he's never lost when he's favored in, because he's only
just to the Dallas Mavericks.
he's never lost when he was favored in. He wasn't favored in that one.
Yeah, they were.
No, they weren't.
You're
LeBron.
wrong. The Miami Heat were favored against the Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks were huge underdogs against the Miami Heat. Facts.
Were they in the first one?
Yes.
Oh, I read
That was a
I
colossal.
might be wrong then, but I read yesterday that he's never lost a final he was favored in.
No, he's never lost a final where he wasn't favored in. Every time he's been favored, he won. He wins.
Exactly, that's
The
what I
only
mean.
time he's lost is when he wasn't favored.
That's what I'm saying. So he's never lost a final.
Besides
He was
the Dallas
favored.
Mavericks.
Got it. That article must have been wrong. I must be wrong.
You must have.
Yeah,
They
must have read it wrong.
They were not. There's no way in a million years the Dallas Mavericks were favored over LeBron James and the Miami Heat that year. They were dominating. They had like 27 wins, or they were stacked. Dallas had no business winning that fucking series. They
Why
choked.
don't you Google it quick?
I already know it. I remember watching it. Dallas was huge underdogs. It was amazing. If I was rich and famous, I would have bet. I was shocked when they lost that series. I was shocked. I remember watching it. They were up 2-0, was it? Oh, no, they should have been up 2-0. They would have been up 2-0. Remember when they blew like an
18-point lead.
and that would have put them up 2-0, and
We were watching it,
they still won game 3, which would have put them up 3-0, but it put them up 2-1, and then they lost 3 straight.
We were watching it in Coon Rapids. Shout out to Roger. We were in Opa. We were watching that game. I remember on the big screen in Opa's living room.
Yeah, the Dallas Mavericks should have never won. The LeBron James choked. Really, what happened was Dwayne Wade should have just let LeBron run shit that series, and they would have won. What happened was Dwayne Wade was still trying to run the offense to himself.
He was.
Then the next year, from that moment on, the offense ran through LeBron, and that's why Miami became dominant. If they would have did that from day one, LeBron would be 4-5 right now, about to get his 5th ring.
I just remember how mature. I just like watching it happen and being blessed to watch something so blessed, like watching one of the all times that you'll ever see, and I've been blessed to live through it, is LeBron James, and I feel like it's a blessing to watch him progress. And I think the number one thing is how he gets to the hoop. Like you are not going to stop LeBron from getting 2 points. He's shooting 64% right now from 2-point range in the playoffs. It's the best he's ever done.
And that's actually not even his best skill. He's the best passer. When he has the ball as point guard, he knows the game so well. He makes the right move. It's like who said this? Like, if LeBron has 40 points but only 5 or less assists, you could beat him. But if he has at least 20 points and has 10 to 12 assists, you're done.
You're done.
If he gets 25 to 30 and 10 to 12 assists, you're gonna get smoked. Because he's getting his teammates involved. And once LeBron starts getting his teammates involved, you're fucked. That's what happened last night. They hit 11 threes in the first half. 11 in one half.
Yeah, the Miami Heat are one of the teams with the worst. I don't know what's going on with my feed. With the worst perimeter defense in the league. So, It's really scary stuff, and it's really interesting to watch. But ultimately, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about failure, mixing it with expectations, and that's going to be the general topic for today.
Expectations is a topic.
Expectations. So remember, folks, everything that we talk about is not right. It's not wrong. It's simply our perspective. And with the understanding of ambiguities in life and openness to inexactness and misinterpretation and different perspectives and inexactness, that's a big deal here at We're in Media. We talk about that all the time. And the understanding that, like I just did with the fact, I just reported and rehearsed. I just did it. I just gave a statement where I recited a fact that was incorrect, and that's ambiguities. People do that all the time with facts, with stories, and interpretations. So, I know you have a lot of experience and values, Zaya, on expectations because of your background. So I just want you to lean into your general understanding, and because you've done so much with expectations and working a program of growth. So what's your insight on expectations and failure and so forth?
I think expectations, this is super easy.
Yeah.
High expectations leads to low acceptance, and low acceptance leads to low serenity. So if you want to be happy and be peaceful, you're going to have zero expectations of others.
Zero.
Or very low, and that leads to high acceptance because you're not expecting anything from anyone. Everything the way it is supposed to be the way it is. You're already accepting it. No matter what comes your way or my way, I'm like accepted it already. I have serenity because I have no expectations. Like when I wake up today, if I expect it's going to be an amazing day and nothing's going to go wrong, more than likely that's not what's going to happen. If I can just assume stuff's not going to go the way I want, I can still have an amazing day because I'm not putting such high expectations. Now, I think on ourselves is different. I think it's important. This is what we talk about when I talk about leading by example and leadership is you should hold yourself to a high standard and a high expectations. And you should try to get other people to go up there with you, but you shouldn't put any expectations of pressure on them. That's on them to do that. And my job is to lead by example, so to keep doing that. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, obviously, another level to this is communication, right? Obviously, when you have a dynamic of certain relationships, you have a business partner, you have your girlfriend, a boyfriend. Obviously, you're in a relationship where you do expect them to there's a contract, there's an agreement that you're making. I'm agreeing to be your boyfriend. Okay, I need to communicate what that means. It doesn't. I need to be like, oh, so I'm gonna talk to her every day. I'm gonna hang out 2 or 3 days a week. Whatever I agree with, that's what I'm. You know what I mean? Like there is some expectations that you need to communicate when you have specific agreements, when you're at work, when you have your team. But the key is, even with all that, I don't expect people to do anything. Which means if they fall short and the relationship doesn't work out, I'm not mad because I'm not expecting them. I'm just communicating my standard. I'm communicating what I do, and then it's on them to meet that. If they don't,
I think that's a great value that you're bringing forward and a lot of insight. And it was what, Zay? High expectations equals what, and what equals what? Say it again.
High expectations, low expectations leads to high acceptance, which leads to high serenity and peace and happiness because you're already accepting everything the way it's supposed to be. It just is. It's like the old saying, it is what it is. If it wasn't meant to be, it wouldn't be that way. That's the spiritual principle of all this.
It's like control and openness. And
there's no control.
Exactly.
You're only of yourself, though.
Exactly.
So of you and your standard, and you're not no one else. You're just like, it's almost like assuming everyone's going to be a piece of shit almost. You could do that. I don't like to do that because it's negative.
But yeah.
But you could do that. You could have
rational.
low.
It's rational.
But I'm just saying none. I'm just saying none because in that idea you're already creating a preconceived negative thought that everyone's gonna be a piece of shit. I'm just saying none. I could wake up today and 10 people could be a piece of shit and 10 people could be loving me.
I think the interesting point you make is a few things I want to lean into, and I think you've got a lot of good points.
No expectations.
Is the openness. Openness to others, and I think you made great points with openness, communication, expectation, and serenity, and like communication as well. All these things, expectations, openness, communication, transparency, all these things are essential. To me, when I think about expectations, it comes down to me being transparent and communicating and being open with others. If I'm communicating what I want and what I expect and what I anticipate, or what I expect from a relationship, like you said, if I can't communicate that with someone else, then how can I ever expect them to meet that? So Gary Vee talks about being candid and transparent and authentic and vulnerable, and to me this is the exact topic about that. It's about authentic, transparent vulnerability in communication and expectations. So if I'm going to expect something from someone, I can't just sit here and sit back and expect them to read my mind or expect
No, you have to
or to
communicate.
know. I have to tell them, hey, in my relationship with you, when we're sleeping together or we're having intimacy or if we're doing business together or we're on a team playing
Or your
sports
brothers,
together
whatever the
or my brother, I have to tell you.
Communicate.
Communicate.
But
It's
even
number
then,
one.
and even then though,
Having unrealistic expectations is an issue.
even
Gary
then,
Vee, shout out to Gary Vee. He gave a piece of content this morning that spoke to my heart. He said, you can never be taken advantage of. The only way someone is ever taken advantage of is if, number one, they are expecting something more in return on the back end. When they give, they're expecting something in return, and they're giving. So that's.
Solomon, just go this way, dude.
And
You're
then
gonna
number
knock all that over. Stop
And
walking
then
over,
number
please.
two.
It's just risky.
And then number two is he said if you're trying to get an instant shot of appreciation or adrenaline, and it makes so much sense to think about it. If I'm giving freely and I don't have any strings attached, and I'm just trying to support you and give to you, that means I don't have any predeceived expectations or predispositions to expect something on the back end. But if I'm manipulating you and giving you something and then I expect you to do something on the back end without telling you, then that's giving with expectations. So he said, number one, giving with expectations. And number two, he said, if you're trying to just make yourself feel better because you're unhealthy and dysfunctional, Gary Vee said, you just want a quick shot of appreciation or feeling good or adrenaline so you help someone. So it's a really interesting conversation about expectations and giving and helping and being of service. And that's what I want to go. And that's how I'm looking at this, because this morning Gary Vee really spoke to me with that piece of content. Did you know what I'm saying, Zaya? That really hit me in the face.
Yeah, it's really simple. Even when you communicate stuff, I'm not saying this is what I expect of you. I'm saying this is my standard that I hold myself to. And I would like you to meet this. Even if I tell them that, I'm not expecting them to do that, even. I'm communicating my standards, I'm communicating, but I'm still not putting high expectations on them, because if I do, I'm going to get disappointed. Or when something happens in the relationship, I'm going to get angry. But if I don't do that, I'm just communicating that to them with no judgment and no expectations of how they're going to react. I can, no matter what they do, it's not going to disappoint me. Doesn't mean I don't have feelings. I'm not going to say something when it comes up and address it. But I'm not going to sit there every time if I have a partner and then get angry every time because they're not meeting the expectation I'm communicating. I'm overly invested in that expectation, and it's going to negatively affect my spiritual happiness and acceptance. If I just communicate that over and over with no expectations that they will do it, then it doesn't affect my acceptance or spiritual or serenity or happiness. At some point, you have to if someone's not doing that and meeting that with you, you're going to have to, that dynamic of that relationship may have to end. But you're holding yourself to that standard. You're not breaking your boundary, and you're not expecting too much from them, which would lead to disappointment. At the end of the day, humans put way too much expectations on other humans.
100%.
When you realize that humans are extremely flawed, and when you realize that it takes so much work within yourself to change yourself, that it's really easy for me to not have any expectations on people. And I don't do it because I think they're less than. I just know that they're flawed, and that it's really hard to change. It's
Thanks,
not
Morgan.
easy. It takes a lot of work to change. I know that. So that's how it's really easy for me, and this is what I look at as compassion is I'm compassionate and really and try not to be non-judgmental, but it is my job to communicate and be transparent and open on my side of the street of what my boundaries are and what my standards, and try to tell people this is why I hold myself to that. And if they don't want to be a part of that, then they're just not going to be in my life. But I'm not going to get angry at them. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to be like, okay, that is what it is.
I think it's really
acceptance.
interesting. It's important when you first meet someone in business or life to be this way. Because if I'm going to have any kind of interaction or relationship with you, we're going to do anything together, when we first meet, we need to make sure that we understand this.
Communication,
So,
yeah.
It's a big game. Life, everyone, is one big game of communication, as my brother just said. Everything that we ever talk about on the show comes back to how we articulate and explain our wants, needs, and desires, or how we meet others' wants, needs, and desires. And communication is the game of how you do so. You cannot understand others' expectations without them communicating it and you listening. I can't understand Isaiah's expectations or what he needs or wants from our relationship. He can tell me, but if I'm not listening, I'm never going to hear it. So it's all one big game of how I listen, how I communicate, and how I share what I need, my wants, needs, and desires with my people in my life and the world in my life. So anyone no matter where I go, no matter what I want from the world, I need to be listening. I need to be sharing what I expect, and I need to try and be humble in what I expect. And I think that's a really valuable perspective the way that you articulated it with the serenity. If you have lower expectations or higher expectations, and the correlation with serenity, contentment, and like
happiness.
And
Because
happiness.
if you have high expectations, guess what? Now you have low acceptance, and then now which means it's fucking you up because you're angry and you're frustrated, disappointed. And now you have low happiness and serenity. So it really comes down to what do you want? Because if you have high expectations, you're going to get disappointed, you're going to get frustrated every time because that person isn't acting the way you wanted, that you told them that was your expectation. Doesn't mean you can't have your own standards. Again, I'm saying communicate your boundaries and standards, but you can't expect other people to follow them.
Unless they
You have your own, and that's where you hold it. If they don't follow them, they're out of your life. You cut them out of your life. If someone's unwilling to meet the standards that you have and boundaries, they're not meeting that. But don't put expectations now where you're going to expect them to do that, because no one needs to do anything. It's all about control.
being with us.
No one needs to act any way. I have no way. Anyone can act any way they want.
I have no control
and
over
it should never affect me because now I'm giving them power. If I'm putting super high expectations on you, and I want you to act a certain way.
So good.
I'm kind of controlling you in a way, and then if you don't act a certain way and it's messing with my emotions, that means I'm allowing you to affect me, and I'm also allowing my control to affect me, and it's really just super unhealthy, and it's a really bad sign when people have super high expectations. Now, it's a little different when you have like a sports team and you have millions of dollars and you're chasing for championships. Like LeBron James,
That's a great point.
He's trying to hold his team to like they're getting paid millions of dollars. You sign
or
a
if you're
contract.
running a business.
You sign a contract to be here. So the dynamic of that is a little different.
But it's the same principles.
It's the same principles, because even if that's happening, you can't. You have to assume there's a risk that you could hire someone and they're not going to do what you need them to do.
Which comes down to communication, candid and transparent.
So
and
you're
authentic.
so you're gonna have to fire them.
Tell them right away what you expect.
But even then, you have to assume you're gonna hire people that are gonna fuck up and be a bad employee from time to time.
All day.
So that's the leadership of being able to handle that without having that affect you as a boss. So,
hiring is guessing, firing is knowing, as Gary Vaynerchuk says.
Yeah.
Hiring is guessing, firing is knowing.
So like you have that, but at the end of the day, the spiritual principle that we're applying here that will work, especially when it comes to business and when you're dealing with, because when it comes to business and working with others, that's when I think there's money involved, and this is where this is the worst. Like you see it with so many employees, like you see it with so many employees because there's so many personalities, right? And we go to work, and everyone has expectations of everyone's role. Everyone has all these expectations of what they're going to do, and it really can fuck with people's emotions and their egos, and they get hurt. And I've seen it happen so many times in the work environment.
That's why Gary Vaynerchuk says simplify roles and tasks. That's why it's so cool. We talk about it at We Win Media, having your 4-person, agile, flexible, small team. If you have simple tasks for people and you hire them, now there can't be any miscommunication of expectations and standards and meeting that. If I simply hire you to write blogs and write copy for post, your job's simple. You just have to write blogs and write copy for post and then test, measure, and develop what's the best one. If I hire you to do video editing and post-production, your job is to do video editing and post-production. If I hire you to do the math on the ads that we're running and to calculate CPM and calculate the results that we're getting from what we're doing, now I hire you for math. You're the math guy. And then the final one would be the artist. If I hire you to do the art and the 3D animations and the comics or whatever, your job is the animation and to measure and test and develop what's the best art. So now you guys would come together and you would have a simple task and goal and objective to produce content and communicate with others and share what you want with the world, and then you would share it at scale. That's super simple. I think that's a great point that you made, though, is simplifying. And I think that's correlated with everything that you just talked about with expectations and being transparent and having minimum expectations and simplifying what our expectations are and not in complexity and removing complexity, which I think is essentially ego. I think essentially everything that you're talking about is like ego and control and like fear and insecurities. It's just really great value that you're bringing forward. I think you have a lot more. I think you have a lot more of a experience with expectations, a little bit more than I do, but.
Again, it's just like it's not having this preconceived idea that the story is going to play out this way. So if you think about expectations, I can tell you right now how it works out in my brain, and I can tell you start to run. It's called playing the tape out. If you start to play the tape out, you're practicing expectations. If you're not playing the tape out, I'm not practicing expectations. Or projecting into the future, right? When we project into the future, like I'm not saying you shouldn't have strategy and planning. We talked about that, but there's projecting that we do that's involved with expectations. That's super unhealthy. That's what that is, right? You're telling someone something, and then you're already thinking about in your brain like what the scenes are going to be like, how it's going to be, if they act this way, if they act that way, or if they don't do this, or it's like that's like, dude, that's fucking really tiring. Like, just tell them what your standards, communicate what you are, and don't worry about it at all. What the fuck they do, because it's not my responsibility it's not my responsibility, and I don't have power to control others. The moment I can give that up, the freedom is the serenity that comes. Again, I'll hammer home with this that it's the goal of practicing this is serenity, which is from acceptance. Acceptance leads to serenity and peace and happiness. And again, that's what we want. So this is the principle that will happen. And what happens when I practice this, my relationships thrive. Because no matter what happens with someone next to me, and that's why I'm a very likable person, I feel like, is because I'm not super judgmental. No matter what the dynamic of my relationship is, I recognize that they're human and they're flawed, and I can forgive them really quickly because I realize that they're just not perfect.
I think
so.
It's
like that's
so beautiful what you're talking about. I think it's really masterful, but it's so simple and practical. Like, if you think about what you're saying, it's just so practical. Like, think about it. You're talking about a world with all these difficult, complex religion, money, society, human rights, all these complexities with government, business, people's personalities. And then if you think about one of the most practical things, it would be low expectations for behavior of others, really, because there's so much. I just think that's so practical. And I think a lot of times we're unpractical with a lot of our expectations and our standards. But I just want to lean into that and like understanding people that we create these in our own, like, not only as my brother said with our, so I think it's interesting to look at it from the lens of our own personal relationships, but then also our standards and expectations for ourselves.
Yeah, like for example, bring it into society about how society expects what you should do.
So human rights and societal values are all created by us folks.
Expectations
If you take Minnesota's values or the U.S.'s values and compare them to Mexico's or Brazil's or Israel, or you compare them to Australia or China, we all are humans. We're all part of the same tribe. We're Homo sapiens, but we all have these different societal values and standards and expectations when it comes to how we treat other people and how it's really interesting how there can be such drastic beliefs. Like if you look at Western culture versus Eastern European culture, or even European culture, so Western versus Eastern and European culture, it's just all of these a lot of different complications, complexities, and differences, but really we're all the same people. So why do we have all these different principles and beliefs in all these different areas of the world? But really, it's interesting how complex that is and how human rights and societal beliefs and values are so different everywhere in the world, but yet we're all still the same tribe. To me, it's kind of weird that we can't just simplify it and make us all one and have us all remove all these different variations and complexities and personalities and religions and societal and make it simple as can be about being as humanistic as possible, supporting our elders and the elders supporting the youth and paying it forward and living by how I want to treat others is how I treat myself how I want to treat others, and I treat others how I want to be treated. And it's super simple stuff, and it's super interesting how we as humans think we can come into a situation, we make it super complex, and we make it more about like, oh, we're some special species, we're some complex super being, when really if we just look at the core of it, I think we're just another organism trying to sustain in an environment and survive, and ultimately it comes down to simplifying everything and rather than making it complex. Don't you think that's interesting, Zaya? The difference is how there's such a variety of social values and like a variety of how the expectations of how we're supposed to treat each other in the world in different countries.
Yeah, so again, that's rooted in, there's a lot to really touch on there. I mean, obviously certain...
Shout out to Nate Peltier. He said the same thing yesterday. Thanks for being on the show, Nate. We talked about a lot of big stuff yesterday.
I mean, it should be the same though, right? We're humans, so
you would think
it's simply broken down to love, tolerance, compassion, empathy that we talk about at More Love Nation. Those are universal principles that we should be treating each other by. That's universal. How we come up with these expectations is just like influence of culture, religion, race, language, how governments are ran. That's all influences.
Fictional stories.
Yeah, fictional stories.
They're all created by
That's
us.
what it is. But the whole point that I want to bring up, not only individually now and on a societal level, like my brother talks about, is this is the opposite of how most people live, and this is what I try to do every day.
Thanks for being with us.
I can only focus on my side of the street.
Good morning, John Sevilla.
So
Estevez.
if you look at extreme expectations of yourself that you set, this is like the opposite. So what I'm talking about, no expectations of others, but I believe you should do the opposite for yourself. Not
exactly.
Not in a
Great
harsh,
point.
not in a negative, harsh way though, because this can be really easy to be
over the board on.
Just really mean to yourself, right? We see this with shame and guilt. But I believe there is a little bit, I'm soft, like and
soft.
This is the way for me, and this is what working out is the key for me. This is the magic how I'm able to do this. And this is what I've seen athletes. Athletes are the best. Is just ridiculous, almost an insane amount of a standard to yourself that you hold yourself, like Kobe Bryant, like ridiculous, But that's leadership. Like he held himself to such a high standard. It was almost impossible for him to meet or anyone else. But that's the inspiration. And not judging anyone else for not doing that or being that way, but like elevating people around you by doing that. That's like inspiring when you see people that are so high, like they're focused, they're disciplined, their positivity, they're giving. They have this high expectation of themselves, the standard, and they don't let people stay in their life long term that can't get up there. Now, it doesn't mean they think they're better than, but it forces them to bring people up. It says, you're going to get to my level, I ain't slowing down for you. You got to get here if you want to be with me. That's what the best sports teams do, the best businesses. Like it's Gary Vee, it's the micro speed and macro patience.
100%.
Like you have to get to that level. And
that's what he does. Gary Vee built up all of his employees to CEOs. He's done it over and over again.
But that's the opposite of how we react. So that requires your own inventory of just yourself and no one else. What happens is everyone wants to take everyone else's inventory and put all these expectations on other people, but they're not doing anything to themselves and holding themselves to that standard or doing their own inventory of how they act. And it's like super hypocritical. So basically 99% of people are hypocrites. Almost everyone's a hypocrite.
Yep.
I'm a hypocrite even to some spectrum. But what I'm saying is
awareness.
This is the solution to not be a hypocrite and to inspire others and hold everyone to a higher standard while still loving everyone at the same time and not just being like, oh, you're a bum because you can't do what I can do. But you're bringing people up by saying, hey, this is how I do this. This is my standard of love, tolerance, passion, empathy, work ethic, community, giving, yada, yada. The principles that my brother talks about, that Gary Vee talks about, it's the same thing. It's focusing on your own audit. And this is where the growth comes because you can't be stuck and stagnant and lazy for this to work. It requires action at your own self every day.
Bias for action. That's a characteristic of the founder's mentality.
Yeah, so you have to look at yourself every day and be like, what am I doing to not be hypocritical? What am I doing to grow? What am I doing to do these things? What am I doing to have high expectations of myself while not having any on others? That's the final thing. It's the opposite of what everyone does, really.
I think that's a great point, what you touched on a lot of things, but I think that's interesting how you think about most people, like you said, they're auditing everyone else and
but not
everything,
themselves.
And they're never auditing themselves.
No, it's the definition of a hypocrite.
And I think another point you touched on that was really important is the leadership. If you look at the leadership that we have that's lacking now in America, especially in America, and the world, I would say the leadership in the world is terribly lacking. If I was there's certain guys that are doing great things, but man, there's so much. When you look at corporate social responsibility, business social responsibility, I'm going to switch it to BSR. It's called CSR. It's called corporate social responsibility. I think our corporate businesses are failing Americans, and I think our leaders are failing Americans. And I think what you said about having higher, it's interesting when you compare expectations for others versus me. I think you're right. I think inwardly expectations should be high, but not egotistically unrealistic, where it's like, oh, I'm this supreme being that can do all these things no one else can. It's the interesting thing.
Pushing yourself.
It's the interesting balance, right? Because if you read ego as the enemy, ego is the thing that gives us the belief in ourselves that we think we can do something and the confidence to do it, but then we can't be unrealistic and unpractical within that. Like if I'm pursuing my dreams and my passions and I want to do things, I have to be practical. As my brother was talking about practicality, a lot of the stuff that he talks about is practical. It's simple and it's very, very practical. It's realistic. So a lot of this comes back to ego and understanding that I think with myself, I need to have realistic expectations, but I also need to make them slightly higher than everyone else's, because if I do as a leader or anyone in the world that want to try and make a difference or help others, I need to be one that's doing what I'm that's taking the action and behaving the way that I believe others should be behaving. So I think that's a great point, and I just think that in general, that's so true with auditing and inspecting and awareness to this. And I think you can't have any of this or talk about any of this or go anywhere with it unless you're willing to audit and inspect. And John Sevilla Estevez asked what question?
I don't even know what he means.
Does expecting mean positive on the other hand? John, can you please articulate? Does expecting mean positive on the other hand? No, John, we don't think, I think I somewhat pick up what you're saying, but I don't think expecting is negative or positive. I think what my brother was touching on is about being realistic and practical with our expectations of others in the world, and being open and honest and authentic and candid with those expectations with others so that they know. So no matter what relationship I'm in, whether it's an intimate relationship, a business relationship, or a sports team, we can have open dialogue. It all comes back, like my brother said and I said, to communication and dialogue and expectations and understanding of each other. And that all comes back to, I think that's positive, where if you really care and you want this to work or you want something to work, you'll come together, you'll sit down and you'll audit it. So there was
I don't know.
issue.
I don't get what he means by that. I mean, you mean, is it? I don't think it's positive or negative. It has nothing to do with that.
I don't think so either.
I think
But if he'll articulate,
you could be like, if you're specifically asking, you have an expectation to be positive, right? So, for example, if you have a high standard of being positive and using positive language within what you do, that's a specific expectations that you can communicate to people, but you can't expect that people are going to reciprocate the positive language and energy that you do. But you can hold yourself to a positive attitude and a positive mindset and positive language, while not expecting anyone else to do that. If that's what you mean by being negative versus being positive, or if you just mean like looking at expectations being as a negative or positive thing. I think having high expectations of others is negative.
Having low expectations of yourself is negative as well.
Yeah, it is negative.
And then flipping it back, what is positive there for expectations?
Having none on someone.
Exactly, I agree. So what we said, I think that makes sense. So having
because I'm already accepting you for who you are, no matter what the fuck you do, because I'm expecting you to behave in no certain way. I'm accepting you for who you are, no matter what you do, because I'm not expecting you to act in any certain way. And if I have a standard,
unconditional,
and if I'm in a relationship with you, let's just say with relationships, because people might get this wrong, and I'm communicating that to you, and that's my standard. And that's my boundary. I'm still not expecting you to act that way. If you do, great. If you don't, then it's on my job to remind you of that, or sit down and remind you about how you're not meeting my standard.
Great value.
But I'm not getting angry at a situation and reacting like a child, because if I had expectations, every time that happened, I would talk shit and get in a fight with my girlfriend, which I'm not. Like, I'm single. But if I did,
shout out ladies, shout out single ladies.
If I did, that would happen. Then you see it with relationships. They get in all these arguments all the time. I have friends.
It's a direct sign of unhealthy.
It's a sign of expectations.
And
a healthy relationship means you can continually put your standard, rephrase that standard, and that person, if they don't respect you, then that's on you to end it. Like, oh, this person.
Shout out to Indira Benitez.
That person's not respecting my boundary. But that's how it's handled. Then there's not have any expectations of you acting any certain way. So I'm already accepting you for who you are and what you may or may not do. Therefore, I'm already in a more state of serenity, because I'm not in my mind obsessing with preconceived ideas and situations and playing the tape about how the fuck you're going to react, because I don't give a, well, not that I don't give a fuck, but I really don't.
Yeah.
Because I already told you what my standard and expectations are.
I think
My
that's
standard and my
so
boundaries
much
are.
value there, Zaya. You're doing.
It removes all sense of thinking that you need to think. It removes the ego.
It kind of removes ego.
It removes your ego and fear, because you don't need to have any ego and fear, because you. But this is an issue too, like we're talking about. If you don't audit yourself, you don't even know how to communicate those standards and stuff. So that's the issue. Again, this is awareness, where if I'm never doing that to myself, how am I going to be able to communicate that to you? And if I'm putting high expectations on others and low expectations on myself, I'm never going to be a person that's happy and transparent and able to practice these things, because I'm not following that principle.
So I think you just hit it on the head, and I think I'm going to lean into this topic as adults versus childs and emotional articulation. So I think what you just said is exactly the topic that Gary Vee talks about all the time, is emotional IQ and emotional intelligence and control of my emotions. And I think that's a big topic about what we're talking about with expectations, communication, and understanding that. And I think it's adult versus child, where I've lived in a lot of community environments, and I think a lot of this topic correlates directly with understanding how to communicate and articulate something to someone else about how my emotions or how I feel about a topic, an idea, a concept, or a belief, and then sharing that freely, but also not judging others and having tolerance for their beliefs and so forth. But at the end of the day, I have to be respectful of other people's emotional fragility. But I think that's more on a personal level. So here's what I'm trying to lean into. In life, yes, at scale when I'm on social media, I'm not going to pay as much, I'm not going to pander as much to emotional articulation and other people's emotions because I'm not really having sharing intimate space with them. But living in community environments, I'm a huge fan of. That's why I would want to lean into a better property solution in building somewhat of community environments and more community and tolerance for others. Because when you live together and you share more of a space together, it forces you to do these things. It forces you to communicate expectations. It forces you to be open and authentic and vulnerable to other people's inexactness, imperfections, and ambiguities. And then if I have an issue with someone making some kind of gesture or move or noise or saying something or doing something, I have to articulate how that makes me feel. I have to come to them as an adult instead of being a child, and I have to come to them and communicate my emotional articulation, how it's making me feel. How am I emotionally communicating with people? Okay, this made me feel this way, or this made me feel that way. This hurt me, this didn't hurt me, this... How, as an adult, can you ever go and operate in life, in the world, and go out and adventure if you're never going to be able to look at someone and tell them how emotionally they make you feel, or how they bug you, or how they bother you, or how they help you, or how they don't help you? I think it's childish to think and operate in that way where you have all these crazy high expectations for other people in your life, or people that you interact with or even live with, however intimate you are with them. In general, this concept works for all of it. It's childish to expect other people to live like some supreme being and be perfect when I'm imperfect. I'm an imperfect creature expecting others to be perfect, and then walk around and expect everyone around me to know without me ever communicating what I expect of them and how they make me feel and how their actions and how what they do and say impacts me. It's the conversation of people,
Yeah,
places.
so we're talking about emotional intelligence, really.
Yeah, it's about how people, places, and things, and letting them control you and how you let them impact you. And if you're really in a good space, you're not going to let people, places, and things really disrupt you or hurt you that much. I think it's child versus adult that we're talking about in communication and emotional intelligence. Don't you think that's a direct correlation with expectations? Because if I'm a child, I have a hard time communicating my emotions or my expectations. But as an adult, I should be able to share that with the world.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, this really comes down to happiness, man.
And emotional intelligence.
It's really happiness, though.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
telling
right.
you, because in serenity and peace. The most peaceful and serenity and happy I am is when I'm doing this. I'm telling you, anytime I am not happy, it's because I'm not practicing acceptance. It's because I'm putting expectations on something. And I want to give you, this is what I'll hammer home.
Yep.
The last thing, and I know my brother's going to like this. When it comes to us not having acceptance, of not being happy with where I'm at in my life, it's because I'm practicing on an individual level, to remove other people out of this now. I've had times in my life, and I see it worse with other people, where they're super unhappy with their life. And what happens is they have no serenity, no peace, and they have no acceptance. It's because they expected their life to go a certain way, but they're not doing the work for it to change. It's like they're not, you know what I mean? Like that I have to be like, I am where I am because of myself and no one else in my actions.
I am what
So-
I am. That's all that I am.
Because, if you look at serenity and happiness and acceptance and expectations, a lot of people are unhappy with where they're at in their life because they're not doing this. So their relationships suck, they haven't, their job they hate, and they're not doing an honest inventory with themselves about their side of the street and their lack of expectations of themselves. They're holding themselves way too low of a standard and other people too high, and they're not practicing acceptance because of that, and they're not happy, and they're blaming everyone else. Then these people blame everyone else for their problems because they're not happy. They're not looking within, recognizing they're not where they are because they've not put enough expectations on themselves to do the work and change. That's the reality. And a lot of it has, like my brother says, a lot of people are happy with, when it comes to careers and just not being happy with what you wake up and do every day with your passions. That is a direct correlation to all of that. And if you can practice this, even if you're not in your job that you love, or your career, and you're not following your passion, once you start practicing this, from my experience, I get in a really good place. Then it's really easy for me to start making changes. because I'm in a good place and I can quickly start making these changes and getting little results that build up, and I'm already happy, even if I'm not doing what I want to do the way I want to do it, but I'm already taking this action that's causing me to pivot, and the universe is reacting to that, and I'm slowly making this change. Even if it's just like starting a business part-time or a nonprofit, or just
starting a podcast 1 hour a month,
or just starting to exercise, or start to do these things in your relationships because you're super unhappy with your being single and being in shitty relationships your whole life. Like, whatever area I'm talking about this, when I apply this to it, I begin to have a transformation, and it begins to make me feel super good, even though on the outside no one sees any results yet. There's no results yet, right? No one can see them. My ego is still my ego is still like fucking humbled. But inside, I'm already feeling that happiness and serenity because I'm doing this. Even though there's no results. Even though it could be your first podcast episode, right? You don't need to see the results anymore because you're practicing the process of this, and the results are irrelevant almost because you feel the change inside. You feel the change. The results are just like a
byproduct.
Yeah, the results are just like what is it when someone else gives you the result? I can't think of it right now. The results are just like gratification, I guess. You know what I mean? Or
a byproduct.
A byproduct, but that's not it's not the word I'm thinking of. I can't say. But or proof. The results is proof. It's just a proof.
Shout out to proof. All right.
It's just a proof, right? So, but at the end of the day, like that's what it's about. So it's an inside job, right?
Everything's an inside job.
So we focus so much about other people and ourselves in the outer layer, but everything starts on the inside with our emotions and feelings. And people don't realize that that's what affects us so much, my insides. And people as adults act like they're so mature, but they're really not. Maturity is being able to admit your immaturity.
100%.
Maturity is my ability to admit my immaturity and my faults. That's maturity. If I don't ever do that, I'm not practicing maturity, and I'm really not mature. I'm really immature.
Dude, I think you hit on so much amazing value, and we're probably going to wrap this up shortly, but I think you touched on relationship with time and speed. And I think you touched on patience. And then when I think about patience, that's what I think about. And I think you're 100% right. When I've had issues in my life, when I look back on things not working out, it 110% always came back to my lack of patience and my lack of misperception of time and speed. And I would try and do everything and it's like I 100% was operating in somewhat of an egotistical sense of trying to control and push everything forward at warp speed, as the Trump administration calls their operation, warp speed, for the whatever the thing they're working on for the vaccine. But I think patience is the topic that you touched on, and it's really big. Patience with others and patience with myself. And if you think about patience with others and patience with myself, I think this topic is big with expectations, because if I have no patience for myself, I'm not going to be able to have patience with others. And also, in this world where we have people that struggle with physical disability, mental disability, we need to be the most patient with the people that come from the most extreme, difficult circumstances. And I think patience in life is a really big topic. I've struggled with it for myself more than anything. I've had these unrealistic expectations with myself where I should be, and then unrealistically I project those on others. So it all comes back to me to patience and removal of ego and contentment and not being restless and not being discontent. And completely the three main characteristics of growth is being content, being rested, and being non-irritable. And I think I look at a lot of those when I'm operating in life and when I'm working with others, because to me, if I'm rested and I'm non-irritable and I'm content, then I'm doing good. I'm doing well. I'm maintaining self-care because I'm rested. I'm maintaining expectations that are practical and realistic and with contentment. And then I'm not irritable when when places, people, or things say or do something. Where I go, no matter what I do, I don't let the X, Y, Z or factors around me control my emotions or control how I act or behave, taking over my emotions or hijacking my decision making. So I think as I get older, and the podcast really pushes me to grow in this, and I think ultimately living in community environments and also doing podcasting pushes this. It pushes me to be patient. It pushes me to listen to you when you speak, and it pushes me to grow. And I think a big topic with all this is simply patience with ourselves and patience with others, and understanding that there's a reason as consumers we have a misperception of time and speed, and that's a major, major correction we need to make. And that's the reason Gary Vee talks so much about patience and he leans into it so much, is because it's our misperception of time and speed that I've experienced my whole life up until recently reading an article from Harvard on it. I didn't realize that. I was like, wow, I didn't realize at 28 that I had a complete misperception my first 28 years of my life of time and speed. And I had this unrealistic, unpractical, irrational belief that I'm supposed to be wealthy or rich or be successful or be here now. I'm supposed to be, it's like I wanted to be done. I wanted to have everything.
Yeah, that's high expectations. But again, when I talk about putting I think that's really key because on a micro level, I didn't touch on this. When you're holding yourself to a higher standard to do high expectations, there's a healthy way to do that and an unhealthy way. So if you're ego-driven doing that, like my brother says, you're going to try to control everything. You're going to try to bulldoze everything. You're going to try to do 10 years of work in 2 years. And it's very common. That's the misperception of time and speed, where this is the micro speed, macro patience that Gary Vee touches on. I can hold myself to a high standard and be pushing myself constantly without doing that. That's the micro speed where macro patience is coming to play, is where if you do it the way my brother described, that's micro speed, micro patience. You're fucking doing both, and it's a burnout, crash and burn system. But if I'm doing micro speed and putting high expectations, holding everyone to a standard, but I have macro patience with doing all that with the understanding that the results and the places that I want to get are going to take a very long time, and I don't give a fuck how long it takes. In fact, I don't even care how long it takes anymore. I'm done putting an expectation on that. What I am doing is just saying we're going to get there. We're gonna get that goal. We're gonna smoke past that goal, but we don't know when. But we know it. But we're gonna do it
and believe.
We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it, no matter what. Like that's the healthy way to do it. That's what inspiration and leadership come in.
That's believing.
But again, that my brother says that comes down to a healthy relationship with time. It's really hard to do when people are young. I think this is a really big topic for our 20s because we put pressure, like Gary Vee says, on Evan, and we're rambling here, but I think this is really important.
I think it's a really important
because 18-year-olds and 22-year-olds are put so much pressure to figure it all out, so we don't give people that whole time, their first 30 years, to have that freedom to be like that. Because if we feel like you have to have it all figured out, be married with kids and everything, that's society putting this expectation on young people, and it's fucked up.
And it makes sense because they're selling you on it.
Exactly.
They're selling you on it because it's speed and it's expectations and it's standards, and then it forces you to feel that way.
So you're getting sold on all these things that you need to go to college, you need to have a house, you need to get married, you need to do all this stuff by the time you're 25 or 30. It's like such a ridiculous amount of expectations, and then parents believe this because they were taught this lie, and then they put the pressure on their kids, and you have a whole bunch of people putting high expectations on other people, and that's causing kids to be unhappy and live lives they don't really want to live just because society and their parents are putting the pressure on them. Wow. And now there's no serenity, there's no acceptance.
So big, man.
It's like that's all coming to full circle. So you have to look at that. So part of that is when you realize this is awareness, and you see this with artists a lot of times, where you just don't give a fuck about the world judging you.
Nope.
Because you're truly free as an artist. You feel this as an artist. I can tell you when I'm creating as an artist, in that moment, I don't care about what the world expects of me at all because I know I'm staying true to myself. So that's a freedom. You can see it with artists or athletes or someone who's just deep down really doing something they love. They're not worried about anything that society has told them, expected that they need to do something a certain way.
Nope.
So again, I'll hammer this home, which means to me, to sum it all up, you don't owe anyone any explanation for the lifestyle you live.
Nope.
It doesn't even mean that it's the greatest. Like, I'm not going to be like, someone that's using cocaine every day, I don't necessarily think that's healthy, but again, no one owes anyone any expectations for the lifestyle they live. So at the end of the day, when you realize that all this micro shit that society puts pressure and expectations on, your family, your friends, you realize it is an absolute waste of time to get in that dialogue and defend yourself and explain yourself. Whenever you want to do something, people, that's different. It's just like everyone, it's weird because everyone wants to like attack you or question you and defend. Like, people just can't be like, oh, that's cool, that's different. I mean, that seems kind of risky, that's different, but that's what you want to do? Cool, well, have fun, let me know how that goes. Like, why aren't people like that? They aren't, because everyone is putting expectations that you should act a certain way and live a certain way. So therefore, when you do different things, like be an artist or be an entrepreneur or want to travel the world or live minimalistically or whatever else is different than society's norms that we put expectations on, people begin to like attack you. And what I've realized, it's not even worth the time to defend yourself. It's a waste of energy because every time I'm doing that, I'm wasting time that I could be working on myself and whatever it is I want to be doing. Stop defending yourself. I've defended myself when it comes to drugs and alcohol specifically, and spirituality and staying sober, and I think that's a great example of that. And for me, like being in recovery, I don't have to explain to someone why I still do certain things.
Thanks for watching, audience.
You know what I mean? Why I do certain things. I don't owe anyone my lifestyle. I don't think I'm better because I'm sober, but I don't have to explain to someone why I'm sober. I don't have to explain to someone why I have to do so much to help other people in recovery to stay sober. Like there's a different lifestyle that people might look at. Like, why are you doing that still? Defending, like, you know what I mean? It's like what my brother says though. When you wrap it up with following your passions for your profit, this kind of all comes back to the big picture about how society tells you and expects you to act a certain way. But once you realize it's pragmatically brainwashed because they're trying to sell us on those things. It's a sell. It's a brainwashing.
100%.
It might seem extreme to people right now, but it's not. Like, they made up. Grant Cardone talks about this, and this is my last rant for the day. I've really gone on, but Grant Cardone talks about this. They've made up the reason. Like, what should we sell? Well, everyone needs a home. Everyone should need a home. This is what the banks made up. This is the banking system.
Yeah,
all money.
People don't realize how big.
They sold us on housing, the single family. They've sold us on buying college education. I'm not saying no one should go to college or buy a house, single family home.
But you shouldn't automatically
Assume
be transmitted to automatically do all these things without even processing or auditing it.
Or we are sold that everyone has to pay taxes.
Why?
Like that Megan, one of my friends, Megan, made the documentary talking about how actually taxes is a contract that was created that we've signed that was like if you look at where taxes are, and I'm not saying we should not have taxes or either, but again, that is another story that they're selling us on, that you need to pay taxes, you need to buy a college, you need to buy a home,
you need to get married,
and you need to believe. It's like it's a brainwashing, and it's rooted in them controlling you with money. Really, that's what the societies are.
And debt.
Controlling you with money.
That's a big part of it. And then even with religion, and I'm not against all religion either. I'm a spiritual person. But a lot of certain religious groups, because I'm not going to say, I don't like boxing in all religion, because there are good religious groups. I'm going to say specifically with certain religious groups, again, are telling you need to believe this. They're not giving you an open mind to say, hey, maybe you should believe this. They're telling you need to believe this. If you don't, you're going to burn in hell.
That's ego.
So that's like another example. You know, they're telling you what you should believe. They're telling you how you should expect your life. Like, that is not, society's doing that. And once you realize it's designed that way, it's easier to not buy it and be like, it's easier to not buy into it and feel weird or wrong. It's actually freeing when you believe that you're actually doing something that's healthy for yourself and you're not buying into to being a bunch of sheep that just do whatever the fuck people tell you to do because it's what they should tell you to do.
I think that's a really great. I think you just absolutely killed it, and we're gonna wrap it up. I just think you just completely brought complete summary and value forward on all of that stuff that we talk about and believe in. And I think that our youth, and I think that even the elders of America, arguably should be auditing this, because ultimately, if you look at all of this, if you come to a room and you start having dialogue and conversation on it, and being open to auditing concepts, beliefs, principles, and stories, it all starts to make sense, and it all starts to really, really come to fruition if you're open to inspecting and auditing to gain awareness and perspective to all of these things, and seeing that, okay, I'm opening up, I'm auditing and inspecting myself and the people around me and the world around me. Let's have dialogue on this. Let's not be right and wrong. Let's just have open dialogue so we can grow and we can move forward, optimize, adapted, and much more capable of working well with others and being of service and giving to the world as opposed to taking. So I think it's really interesting how America sells us on all of those things, and I think you killed it, so I don't think I need to add much. But I do just want to say in general that I think loving the process you pursue and putting yourself in is the most important thing to all of this, because essentially life is a process, and my brother said it the other day, remaining the student and letting life be the teacher. And I think that summarizes a lot of this. If I have patience and let life teach me, and let life be the guiding compass, and let life give me my lessons and learn from them, but I love the process of that, and I love the process that I'm choosing within that. I think that's a big topic, and then that way you have all these things, because if I'm happy and I feel and I'm loving what I'm doing, and I'm content pursuing my dreams and content doing the process or whatever it is the process I choose and I am pursuing, then I'm going to have contentment, I'm going to have happiness, I'm going to have patience, and I'm going to be able to pursue it and have that outlook and perspective and be practical and realistic within it. So I think, as Gary Vee says, he touches on all this. Shout out to Gary Vaynerchuk for all your value. Shout out to Vayner Media, Vayner Sports, Vayner, whatever it is. He has multiple. Vayner Communications, Vayner Holdings, Vayner Media, all of them. Vayner Gaming, Vayner Baseball. He has a lot of them. Shout out to VaynerX and the Vayner Media. You guys, Gary Vee, you bring me a lot of this perspective and value. And I'll ultimately, at the end of the day, wouldn't have this perspective if it wasn't for Gary Vee and his content that he puts out. So I want to say thanks to Gary Vee.
Thanks, Gary Vee.
And I want to say thanks to you, Zaya, for your amazing perspective today. I think you brought a lot of value forward on the topic of expectations and so forth. So remember, folks.
It's one of the most important topics.
Remember, folks, it's not right, it's not wrong. It is simply
Our perspective. Thank you guys for listening. If I suggest you try some of those things with expectations, and that's how we become awake and we find our true selves and our destiny and our passions in life.
Suggest.
To me, I
It
can.
was really, really good.
It's one of the most important topics because I can clearly read someone and see how they're behaving that way, and it's a red flag that you don't want them around